That's it. We're here. We're back.
We are.
Good evening, Rabbi Eisenberg. Good evening, everybody. We've missed you. It's been a long time, right?
It really has. It feels like it's been ages. Almost feels like we're not in Corona anymore.
Well, we're on the way. We're on the way out, I hope.
Please God. Please
I
God.
hope. We couldn't have picked a worse evening to plan our return, actually, because just as you were saying before that it was a bit late notice that we came back, Jewish Action for Mental Health on the other channel somewhere they're doing a live session at 8 o'clock tonight, and the title of it is
I saw
being
it.
Jewish bad for your mental health?
Well, let's discuss that because maybe people
Well,
will, if
for
people feel
anybody
bad that they didn't go to that session, I might as well add in my rabbinic thoughts to this.
Well, I can tell you the short answer is yes. I can save you all a lot of time. I think there's a lot certainly within Orthodox Jewish religion that for people with OCD and sort of things like that, the ritual saga that we go through and the sort of quite rigid laws that we have that can be you can do one thing, but you can always do something more strict. And we've discussed that extensively recently. But I think that's a nightmare for people that
Oh yeah,
have
I know some
OCD.
people that have religious OCD, and it's awful. It's very very crippling. So whether it is people that feel they have to kiss the mezuzah 15 times as they walk into a room, or people that feel they have to wash their hands repeatedly again and again before bread or after using the toilet to make sure that they are ritually pure. So there are some people, if they have OCD, they're constantly feeling dirty. But there's not only the real dirt, there's also like the ritual dirt. So even though you look at your hands, look, I know my hands aren't dirty, but I think they might be tummy. I've just gone to the toilet. They're tummy. I need to wash them. So they'll wash them once. I'm like, I might have missed a little centimeter over here. Let me do that again. Yeah. And you watch people, they have chapped, terribly, cracked skin on their hands, etc., etc. There are women that need to prepare for the mikveh, for whom mikveh is an absolute nightmare. So that rather than taking somewhere between 35 minutes to an hour, which is what it should normally take, it takes them 4 or 5 hours because they're constantly looking at their fingernails, checking there might be a tiny bit joining out over there. They have no nails left, they just really drive themselves crazy. So for people, the truth is that people who have mental health issues, Orthodox Judaism, some parts of it can be very, very, very stressful.
It can be, and it's also. I mean, let's face it. In some ways, although it doesn't go out of its way to be like that, it can be a very judgmental system, can't it? Because we're constantly judging each other by the standard of what we keep, what we don't keep, how far we go. There's
It can be, but that's already not the Jewish part. That's already not the Judaism part. That's more the Jewish part. So we're all as Jews constantly looking over our shoulder and going, "Is he doing it any better than I am?" No, he's not. But on the other hand, there is another side to Judaism which I think is very, very good for mental health. And the truth is, I've been speaking about this recently in a seminary that I teach in once in a while. So we spoke about bitachon as in trust in God. And he speaks there that the most important part of Avodas Hashem, the most important part within service of God is bitachon, because bitachon gives a person menuchas hanefesh. Menuchas hanefesh, we all know the word menuchat hanefesh means somebody serenity or calmness. And that a person really, if they have true trust in God correctly, not just in a warped sense, then it's a very, very relaxed way of doing things, because you say, look, God, I'm in your hands, no matter what's going to happen. Like there's no anxiety and there's no depression or anything, because I always know whatever's happening is for the best. So it is, in a way, if you can live that way, it can be a real boost for people. So I think that there are two sides to this question. I'm not sure who's going to be on the panel tonight. Is Sandy on the panel?
Yeah, so they've got some great speakers on the panel. From memory, I think it included Rabbi Rickman's on there.
Yeah, I can actually check, but I think Kate sent me the email.
Yeah, Rabbi Rickman's on there. I think, is it Melech David Cantor's on there as well?
Yeah, he's probably on there. Rabbi Rickman, Dr. Sami Mann, Daniel Nissen, who is a therapist, Melch David Cantor is also a therapist, and Miriam Rappaport, who I'm not familiar with. Do you know who that is?
No, pass.
I'm
I
guessing she's also
apologize.
from a therapist from the sound of it, but I don't know.
It's a fascinating subject, and I'm looking forward to watching that back later. Anyway, moving on. It was nice to see you and everybody over Yom Tov, and I don't know about you, but the atmosphere, at least I can't speak for the Hilton Suite, but I was in the main shul, and it seemed like we were somehow getting a little bit of our mojo back.
Yeah, I think so. I think originally we already said that the Hilton Suite was going to be more rigid on the COVID rules than the main shul was, and that's how it was. So that in the Hilton Suite, originally we said there was going to be 2 meters plus mask in the in the in the main shul. We said it was going to be masks, but no 2 meters. So really one seat between people. And in general, people kept a seat, but I think there were plenty of people that you started seeing clusters of people. Did you not?
Yeah. I mean, there were. It was slightly more relaxed, I think, and I think some people felt better sitting together. But what I also liked is that it was left up to those people to decide how close they could sit, and there were plenty of people who decided they were sitting with gaps, but it just didn't feel as disconnected. Um,
Well, look, I think the
as,
shul is big enough to allow people to make that choice, and you vote with your bum, as I like to say in this instance.
yeah, I think so. So on that note, and a lot of the conversations that I had outside of shul on Yom Tov and around Yom Tov are all to do with where we're going in the future, and in terms of our safety, distancing, the setup of the shul, just practical things in terms of how people want things to work. And it's clear that there's a lot of strong feelings, but also very logical thoughts on both sides of the debate. Some people want to see us moving to a more relaxed standard. Some people want us to remain more cautious, and there's everything in between as well. So I think one of the things we're going to do this week, and this won't change anything for Yom Kippur. What this may change is the future. So maybe Sukkot and following after Sukkot. But we're going to send out another survey. I know we did one originally, and this survey is not going to be quite as limited. We're going to ask quite a few different questions as regards. We really want people's feedback as regards shul in general, even outside of shul, the sort of things like this that were virtual content that we run. If people have enjoyed it, then great. They get a chance to give us their feedback. If they haven't enjoyed it, they've also got a great chance to give us their feedback as
But we
well.
won't read it.
um, I would encourage you all to put your names on it and to make it recognizable, because that way we get to not only get your feedback, and it's honest feedback, but we also get to address it if there are particular matters that you yourself wish to discuss. But I think we're going to take this time of the year anyway as one of those times where a person reflects on what they've done the previous year, and maybe also starts to plan about what they're going to be doing in the year to come. And I think a shul is no different as well. So I think the executive council and pretty much everybody in the shul have got ideas about what they would like to see in the future. I've heard some stories of local shuls. I think Holy Law, if I'm not speaking out of turn, I heard that there was a sort of a mini outbreak over there. I heard of one person having it over Rosh Hashanah. I don't think it's caused too much trouble, but the dangers are still there. So there are things that people will want to say about that. But this is everybody's opportunity to get that out of their system and to answer those questions. So don't blame me if things change because you haven't had your say. Everybody will have ample opportunity to answer this survey. So we're going to try and get
the survey is not going to be A, B, and C either, I'm guessing, because you said you're using some sophisticated software for it.
So what I'm trying to do is, if there is so for instance, if I said, rate the quality of the rabbi's laning on Shabbos on a scale of 1 to 10. When you tick 10, you can also in the box below say, the reason I think the rabbi's laning is so spectacular is he sings very nicely. So you can put in there whatever you wish to qualify the answer that you give. So we're going to try and give that out. But we got some feedback just here now from Sheila Morris, who said it was wonderful Yom Tov in the main shul, and I know that lots of people felt the same. So that's really good to hear that people felt that way.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Sheila. And the truth is, I think a lot of people on the way out, I don't know about you, but a lot of people on the way out on Rosh Hashanah commented to me that I felt more like what was Rosh Hashanah 2 years ago as opposed to Rosh Hashanah last year. I think Rosh Hashanah last year had a bit of a sad feel to it. Do you not find that?
I think also people, I don't know, but I felt last year, particularly maybe Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, I think that people, because it was one of the first times that people had come back after such a long time, and because it was right at the sort of peak of all of this going on, then I think people felt a little bit scared, almost trepidation when they came back. So they were a bit worried. I think people felt a bit more relaxed. They sort of know their own limitations, they know their boundaries, they know how far they can talk without having to be, and outside there were conversations and so on, and mask wearing. I think we're quite we're getting quite practiced at that. So I don't know how Yom Kippur is going to be, because as I commented to you the other day, Yom Kippur is always the day where you have this wonderful fasting breath and you're breathing it in your mask. It's going to be a challenging day. But Clive says here, use Survey Monkey. Yeah, Clive, we're using something almost identical. It's called something else, but it will basically do the same thing. So we'll try and get that out shortly. And
I'm not sure what he's saying yes to.
I don't know. I like to think he's saying yes to everything. So moving on. So we've got Rosh Hashanah in the bag. We've done that. We're now in the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah. We're heading straight towards Yom Kippur. Tell me, how does it feel this year for you?
Okay, so it's been an interesting year. I don't know, how many know about all the different tragedies and how many tragedies to speak about, but it really, I think last year was more about the global pandemic, and this year I felt there were a lot more specific tragedies. So I found that the pandemic, I think this year in general, at least I can speak for the UK, I cannot speak for the rest of the world, but in the UK, in general, it had been managed quite well. Yes, I know there were times where there were tremendous amounts of people that were dying. I'm not unaware of that, and I'm not unaware of the fact that we had members in our community that passed away from COVID this year. But I do think that in general, as a community, the effect of COVID was not anywhere near as strong as it was, and the feelings about COVID were nowhere near as strong as they were in September 2020. But I think the feelings that I felt coming into Rosh Hashanah, the trepidation, was really more about things like Miron, things like the Surfside tragedy. You think about the stampede that they had in Miron. We've been as Israel had been in the papers for good reasons, for when it came to COVID, for quite a lot of things. Look how well they've done, and look how well they did it at opening up, and look how well they've done at vaccinating. Look how many people have gotten vaccines. And even though they've all had so many vaccines, strangely enough, the numbers in Israel aren't wonderful. It's a bit of a strange one. The numbers are much better here now than they are there, almost. Even though I think they have an even higher percentage of vaccines.
I think anywhere that sort of has any sort of relaxing, you tend to see that spike in the numbers, because it's not gone anywhere. It's still there. I think one of the main things that people concentrate on both over here and also in Israel is when those cases translate through to people in hospital. So are the hospital admissions going up? And I think we're we're trying to keep them under control over here, and it's nowhere near as bad as they originally had sort of planned for. But in Israel, I think a lot of people have already had their third
Yeah,
vaccine top up, if I'm
yeah,
not mistaken. And I think younger people, so children over a certain age, have also now had vaccines as well. They're very good at doing as they're told and getting and taking it. I think over here there's been a lot more resistance to
yeah.
anti-vaxxers and all sorts of different
Yeah,
stuff.
but I think even in Israel, they said that the numbers are actually showing that most of the people, I'd say 3/4 of the people that are getting ill are actually the anti-vaxxers. I don't know how you feel about that, but isn't there's always this, once in a while you get like these WhatsApp statuses that say that, Mr. So and so or Mrs. So and so, famous anti-vaxxer dies of COVID. Is there
Yeah.
not always like a feeling of irony in your head that goes like, well, there you go. I guess it wasn't so much of a joke as you thought it was.
No. But there's still people out there that have like a Misha gas in their head about the effects of the vaccine. I think one of the reasons for it, if there is any basis scientifically for any of the stuff that anti-vaxxers come out with, you could say that this has been developed in terms of how vaccines are normally developed. This has been done extremely quickly, and it's truly one of, to me, I look at the other side of it. I think this is one of the miracles of the modern age, where we can collaborate and share information between countries and scientific institutes so that we can actually create vaccines quicker and get them out to more people quicker. Whereas it would have taken years, but we're talking
Years.
decades. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, I think the point is not only the vaccine. I think the trials is where people start to get a little bit worried. People say, "Well, you've not really trialed it for long enough, so therefore we're not sure what the effects of this is." Yeah, okay, it looks like on the short term this is going to have a great effect on but I don't know that it's on the long term what the effects are going to be.
well,
God forbid there shouldn't be any long term effects, but
I guess we've either been part of the biggest human trial ever, or we're part of the biggest human miracle in terms of the medicine that they're able to produce. So,
I, yeah, I know it's always a bad joke when people say to me, "Well, aren't you afraid to take the vaccine?" And I keep on saying to people, "There's absolutely nothing wrong with me after having taken it."
okay, so back to
But you
yeah.
have
So
these things. I mean, I think when you come to Yom Kippur and you feel the trepidation of, yeah, it's not being tested. Well, Clive, yes and no, because people will say, what happens in 5 or 10 years from now? It's a little bit too short of a. It's done the job against the virus, I think so. But that's the question. Listen, I'm not a scientist. You're the scientist, Clive. So I'm not one to tell you what does or doesn't work or what has or hasn't been tested. I think it's the smaller tragedies. Again, I think I use the word small as in not small, but
they're
small as in
small
not global.
scale.
Yeah. Not to make light of any of the tragedies, but these weren't global tragedies. And yet, but there were so many people and so many different. Look, we had somebody in our shul, a grandson of one of our members who had passed away in Iran.
Yeah.
Remember Dr. Roger Lister? So his grandson, Moshe Bergman, was one of the people that unfortunately got trampled over there in Iran. So that it did very much. I remember seeing the picture when it came out. It was Thursday night, was Lag BaOmer. Then Friday morning, I got the pictures, missing. And I'm like going through the pictures. I'm like, hey, I know that guy. That guy's from Manchester. And then, a few hours later, on top of the picture, they had typed in Baruch Dayan HaEmet. Blesses, the true judge, which implies basically that he had died. It was a scary thought because I know these people.
Yeah.
I've been to their house a few times. I know where they live. I knew their father. I know their brother-in-law. We all know Rabbi David Lister. I mean, lots of you who grew up over here also knew Penny was Lister, now Bergman. And it's scary to think that these tragedies actually had an effect on our doorstep.
I think also our ability to learn about world incidents. I mean, I thought about this over Shabbos because obviously it was the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks in New York. And I remember at the time, it was the biggest piece of news possibly in my lifetime ever that I can remember. And seeing those videos as they were unfolding was just, it was it was awful.
Yeah.
There wasn't a single person that watched that and was able to feel safe anymore. It was truly terrifying. It did its
And
job.
everyone was glued. I mean, there must be billions of people glued to their televisions. Everyone's like, I remember hearing, I was in yeshiva, so I was nowhere near television, and people said a plane hit the World Trade Center. I'm like, don't be stupid. How could a plane hit the World Trade Center? That's like, and then people said it was an accident. And then from accident went to terrorist attack. And then a second
When the
plane
second
hit.
one hit, when the second
Yeah.
one hit, there was no.
That was
there
great.
was
But
no
the
damage.
craziest thing is to watch how the entire thing just cascaded down and fell apart. That was, for anyone who's been there, I remember I had been there. Have you ever been to New York to those buildings?
So I'd never been to the buildings. Obviously, been to New York, but even if you've never been to the buildings, it's if you see New York from a distance. So if you'd seen it on film or any photos or from an aeroplane, the two things you would always see are were the Twin Towers.
So I mean, just to give you an example, I mean, if you think about it, anybody's been into town and stood next to the Hilton Hotel, it's about 2.5 times as tall as that.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah.
It was
So
absolutely huge.
that's just colossal.
But I guess the point I was trying to make was back then we watched it unfold on CNN, but the ability to get details about people who were there or people that were involved in it, we didn't have this connected network that we now have, whereby through one of these you can get any information you want, and we WhatsApp each other, we send photos, we send video, we send information, and so you can find out about things a lot more quickly and in more detail. And in that way, when we do have a tragedy, it can be anywhere across the world, but you'd be surprising how quickly you'd find out if somebody you knew was involved in it.
Yes, I mean, I'll give you a case in point of what you're saying. It's absolutely true. My friend, so there was a couple, there was a boy from Vienna who was married to a girl from New Jersey that were in the buildings in Surfside. And I remember that, my brother told me that this boy is very friendly with another guy that I knew. And the fellow saw on the news that these buildings in Surfside had collapsed. And he right away realized, oh no, that's where my friend was. So he put out on a WhatsApp status, can you all say Tehillim for, and then he put in the name. And the mother of this boy gets a message on her phone, can you say Tehillim for so-and-so who's been in a building in Miami that's collapsed? And she's like, I beg your pardon. So then she turned on only then did she realize, and she put two and two together. And in a way, I actually, was interesting. Somebody sent me, I don't know if you saw this. Did you see this thing about SOS? Seichel over status, I think it's called. I'm not sure.
No, I'm not seeing that.
So I just got this on my WhatsApp status. A lot of people have put it on. Let me just find it. But a lot of people are advertising that before you post anything on your status, think it could be somebody's brother, it could be somebody's sister, it could be somebody that, here we go. When bad news breaks, when tragedy occurs in the midst of disaster, people feel the need and have the urge to be the first to spread the news and post it on their status. Oh, just missed it. Names, explicit images, graphic videos. If this was your spouse, brother, sister, son, daughter, mother, father, think before you post. The family may not know. Respect the dignity of the victims. Sense over status.
Yeah.
Got it right. Okay.
But it's important. I think that's important on social media anyway, because sometimes we might see something that we find funny or amusing. Well, that's more the reserve of, say, something like Facebook or something like that. A WhatsApp status is used to tell people, what you're selling out of your kitchen or other local events. It seems to be a very Heimischer social network, the WhatsApp
It's
status.
used for a lot of news, by the way. It's used for a lot of news. And so
therefore,
when that happens,
I guess the message is you do have to be careful because, the word spreads very, very quickly.
Yeah, and like I said, this mother only found out that her son was in this terrible, crash of a building through a WhatsApp status.
So there's Clive Moss Barclay's statistics very depressing numbers there, really. But it's true. America's probably got more hard hit out of COVID than anyone else. Rabbi,
Yeah.
let's talk about Yom Kippur, though.
Okay, coming back to Yom Kippur, because you asked me the question. We went off on a tangent. We tend to do that sometimes. Yeah. We don't have Rodney here telling us to come back. Where's Rodney here? If you're here, say hello. But usually Rodney would come in and say, please stick to the topic. Mintz and Eisenberg, please stick to the topic. Yeah. So we have, but as I was saying, so the difference is, Yom Kippur, to me, Yom Kippur is a time it's an interesting time because you reflect on what you've done wrong, and we can reflect on what globally's gone wrong in the world. But I instead of reflecting on the global injustices. There are lots of global injustices going on. You only need to look what's going on in Afghanistan now. It's very, very scary. For 20 years, the Americans and the British people lost lives, money, effort, energy, tears, sweat, etc., and they literally walked away, and the country was overrun in 10 days by the Taliban again. Back to square one. There's literally it's like back to where we were, and even worse.
A few weeks ago, the newspapers were full of, or the Jewish newspapers at least, their focus was this one guy,
the Jew,
that basically is the shamus of the shul there.
And he refused to
leave. He refused to leave.
Well, that's the In Creek of Afghanistan.
I think Ian would see sense and get on a plane at some point. But I think
he's left now.
The reason, has he left now?
He's left now.
So it was something to do with he didn't want to give a get or something like that. I
didn't read that. I didn't read it. I didn't have the time to read it.
It was a crazy story, but it's sad. Yeah. I think that's the last remnant.
But that's the global side of it. I think on the personal side, the Yom Kippur is a day where really we need to start, taking stock. Ian would have been the first one out, he says. I don't believe that. Whatever. But, all right, go on. Ian, the captain only leaves the ship at the end. But, but I think you take stock of what you've done in your own personal life. And there's been a lot, I think this year and last year, there's been a lot of foribbles between people. I think COVID has made people, on the one hand, very cautious. I think COVID has also done something that nothing else has ever done, because you're always looking over your shoulder and thinking to yourself, are you the guy that's going to kill me with that virus? You're the guy who's breathing over my shoulder. You really the killer, And we become wary of each other. That almost never happened. I found that there was certain, on the one hand, COVID created a sense of achdus. Remember when you had that? Yeah. And COVID created a sense of achdus, where on the one hand, everybody came out and they clapped for the NHS. And all that, created a tremendous sense of unity. But on the other hand, there was also a lot of people calling up on other people, telling them, look, these guys are breaking lockdown, whether it's people visiting their family, whether it's people illegally holding minyanim or having simchas. There was a lot of that going on as well. And in general, I think this year it created a lot of bad blood. I mean, we had, how many shows did we have about trying to make peace in the community? I think there was 2.
Oh, we had a few. I know we had that one where we had that charity who came.
Yeah, we had David Buchman.
Yeah.
By the way, it's interesting. So this young girl has been in the papers. Tremendous. The same altar that they.
So let's just recap. When we did that show, David Buchman came on. He was raising money at the time for the young girl Alta. She was on a life support unit. At the time, it was very much touch and go as to whether or not she was going to be allowed to make it, because I think the medical authorities had decided here in England that that there was no point in carrying on. The parents and the community were campaigning very much in favor of keeping the treatment going and trying to transfer her as quickly as they could do to somewhere like Israel or America when the time came. So where are we today with that?
I don't even know where we're up to with that. I know that they came down and said no, that they're not going to allow it to be transferred. And the family said, we have all the funds to transfer. This is not even going to cost the NHS any money. Let's do it. I don't know. I think they kept on moving up to another appeals court, and I think they even lost their case at the UK Supreme Court, and I think they were going to the European Court of Human Rights. I'm not sure where this, but the story was in all the big national newspapers. It was like everywhere. It was a very, very big story. Philip Morrison says it went back to the High Court.
That's right. They came to Sunday Night Live first. They ended up at the High Court. I hope it all gets sorted out. It certainly was in a very.
We had that one. We had two or three discussions that we had, and I think when you come this year, it's one of the things that one of the themes I think that this year Yom Kippur should be about is peace. Is trying to reestablish peace within our community. There's also been a tremendous barrier that's been placed between the different sides of the community. I think the Orthodox side are looking at the more traditional side, and the traditional side looking at more the Orthodox side, and they're both looking at each other and saying, "You guys are crazy. You guys are crazy. You guys are taking things to the extreme. You guys just, why either get back on with your life, or why did you get back on with your life?" And there's been so much animosity that's built up. It's been terrible. And
in a funny sort of way, that lockdown, because you get used to your own personal space, and you become very insular at some level. You have your family around you, and initially the hardship is that you're cut off from the rest of the world, and that you cannot continue socializing. You can't continue your usual whatever your usual schedule is. And then I think the aftermath of that is that you actually got used to that at some point. And when you come out of lockdown, everybody's a little bit more aggressive. They're a little bit more, it's almost like road rage. Road rage happens because people feel very secure in their little metal boxes. And when somebody threatens that, we get overly angry. And it's this almost this social version of road rage that we have coming out of lockdown.
Yeah, and I think people, I guess, have gotten very, very opinionated in lockdown as well. I guess if you're not with other people and you hear your voice a little bit too much, you start to think yours is the only voice that you can hear. And I think people have really gotten entrenched in their own ideas and not giving other people space, or not really believing in other people's opinions on both sides of the divide. And I think, as Yom Kippur comes, I think it would be a great idea to try again for those people that have had issues. Let's try and mend those issues. Let's try and find a way around it. Let's try and find a way through it. That's the first thing that I would say. But then beyond that, I think Yom Kippur is always about, for me, is looking back at the year that's been and saying, giving yourself an appraisal. I don't know, what do you guys have appraisals of all your employees at the end of the year, every single year?
So yeah, well, it might not be yearly, but I think in most workplaces they have periodic reviews of staff performance. And these days, a staff review is very different to the way it was maybe 5 or 10 years ago. These days, it works both ways. So yes, you give your member of staff a review of what they've done, how much progress they've made, and how it's an opportunity as well for you to communicate how valued that person is, and what you're going to do for them in the next year to progress them on a level. But it also works the other way. Staff now have an opportunity to tell the employer what it is that they perhaps could do better, and maybe they've done everything really well. But it can work both ways.
It feels a bit of I don't know, it feels a little bit funny. It feels sort of very modern, politically correct, whatever you want to call it. Because as the employer, you might feel, look, if I didn't live up to your expectations, boo hoo hoo. Did I paid your salary on time? This is what I expect of you. If as long as I've not actually discriminated against them, I'm not sure what exactly does the employee have on the employer.
Well, hang on. In this context, I suppose I'm your employer and you're my employee, so you can tell me if there's something we could do better. But I think that when you look at Yom Kippur, there is this concept that it is a last opportunity, and very much as you get throughout the day of Yom Kippur and you get towards Ne'ilah in that evening, and we always use the analogy of those gates shutting. It feels like a
Well, that's
last.
what Ne'ilah actually means. The word Ne'ilah means closing. So it's Ne'ilah Shar actually means closing of the gates, which is why that's the analogy that's used.
So yeah, so there are chances, sort of last chances for all of us now to sort of turn around and try and make that right. Clive's asked a question here. What can you do to bring all our members back to Shul, especially those who have lost interest?
So I want to come back to that question soon, Clem. I want to finish on the comment that you made before, David, and then come back to that question. I think the reason why Yom Kippur is always seen as a last opportunity, I guess the way I would put it is as follows. If you call your accountant on the 5th of April and you say to him, look, this is where I'm up to, he could say to you, listen, David, as long as you give X to charity before 12 a.m. on the 6th of April, that will still count for you. Or if you buy X, Y, and Z today, that still counts for this year. This is still this year's calculation. Once you hit the 6th of April, you can sort of backdate things and go, oh, whoops, I realized I actually made £1,000 more than I wanted to, and I could offset that against £1,000 of expenses over there. So let me just tack on those £1,000 and put them over there. Too late. You didn't do them on the 5th of April. It's done. I really like the analogy of the tax. I've used that often because I find the tax is a very, very good analogy within that. Is that we know we have a closed system. It's the 6th of April to the 5th of April, or if you live in America, it's the 1st of January to the 31st of December, whatever you're going to call it. But whatever your tax year is going to be, you only have within that time to sort things out. So Yom Kippur is the end of that system. We say, okay, we have last year. Let's look at last year. So God says, okay, I give you 10 days to make up for it. I give you Rosh Hashanah, 7 days, Yom Kippur. You can make up for anything that you did wrong last year. You still have that final 5th of April to make any changes. So are you going to use that 5th of April? Are you actually going to call the accountant and say, look, I think there's a few more things that we could do. I could save myself a few more £1,000. Let's try and work together so to make sure that that we maximize on things. Or are you going to ignore it? And if you do ignore it, well, don't complain on the 6th of April that, hey, I could have saved myself £5,000. All I have to do is move it from this account to that account. Don't blame me. All you have to do is do it yesterday. If you want to do it today, it's too late. And many times we have these things where it's too late. And so the reason why Yom Kippur is so much seen as a last opportunity is because it's the last opportunity for last year. God says last year closes at this point. That's when the books close. Then we start looking at the next year. So you got a chance to mend whatever you did last year. If you mend it, great. If you don't, then whatever happened last year, it's just going to remain.
But you've got this, one of the concepts of Yom Kippur is obviously that whatever you did in the last year, you're being judged, and there is a judgment on that. And that will then affect you in the year to come. So it's decided who will live, who will die, who will get ill, who will be poor, who will be rich, who will be happy, who will be sad, who will rest, who won't be able to sit down for a minute. All of those things get decided. And so to a certain extent, that tax day isn't just a cutoff, because it doesn't wipe the slate clean and we all start again on day one completely clean and unjudged. What we've done last year will follow us into the next year.
Yeah. And which is why the greatness of Yom Kippur is that you can actually wipe the slate clean. So that by the end of Yom Kippur, God can look back and go, hey, you know what? You made amends for everything you did wrong last year. So you're right. You might have done all those things you shouldn't have done. And you should have been a lot better than you were. But now looking at it, you've apologized. You've made amends. I've wiped clean the slate on a lot of those things. And now I look back at last year and go, hey, that doesn't look so bad. Whereas if you didn't have Yom Kippur, we just look back and go, that's rubbish. Okay, let's look at what it looks like in the future.
So two things I think we discussed last year. I think our focus was all on the Sunday Night Live that we did was all about forgiveness. And I might have asked you this then, but we'll go for it again. when you've got that ability to wipe things clean, almost between you and God, that's easier to do because it's just, you're able to sort of say, okay, this is what I did, this is what I'm sorry for, and this is what I'm going to try and do better. But it's harder to do that between your fellow man when it's bein adam lechavero, because you have to get hold of somebody and you have to make it right to them.
So that's an interesting question. I think people misunderstand tshuva. I think there's some truth to what you're saying, but I think on the other hand, I think people feel, or quite wrongly, they get this impression of God being like this mushy character. We just go, oh, I'm so sorry. And God goes, no problem. And then you do whatever you want again for the next year. And at the end of the year, he goes, scusa, sorry. Like, oh, all right, fine.
Can I tell you why? But can I tell you why that is? And this is just my own personal perspective.
Go on.
It's because we keep referring to God as a father, and so I know how I treat my kids when they've done something wrong. I love them to bits. There is virtually nothing that they could do wrong where eventually my heart isn't going to break and I'm going to forgive these kids for if they say sorry enough, or if they demonstrate to me that they truly understand the gravity of what it is that they've done. And so I think in that, sorry?
And that's the point.
Okay. So that's why people assume that it's easier to get forgiveness from God than it is from somebody who's broidus with you.
Well, the question is, did you truly demonstrate your remorse? Because that's really the question. Because I remember having this conversation with somebody in White Cola about 12 years ago. And he said, yeah, look, I show up at Yom Kippur and I said, I'm sorry. I said, yeah, but whatever his name was, are you really sorry? He goes, no. Like, so why do you think God doesn't get that? You think God can't see through your heart and say to yourself, like, I know he's not sorry. Why does he say sorry? Because that's what the Siddur says. Sorry. Okay, I said it. You happy? And I think the difficulty of Yom Kippur, for me at least, the difficulty of Yom Kippur is feeling real remorse. Because for some of the things that you've done, you don't actually feel as sorry as you should. I don't know. I'll give you the example, David, and you tell me if you can sort of
relate. If I can relate to it.
If you relate to this example, have you ever had it where you've said something that you thought was 100% okay, and your spouse got insulted by what you'd said?
Yeah.
Yes, it happens because
almost daily.
That's just the male-female divide. And then what ends up happening basically is the question then becomes, so then you have to apologize. But it's really hard to apologize and to feel that you're sorry, because deep down you feel, hey, I didn't do anything wrong. You're just being ultra sensitive. But don't blame me for your sensitivity. Just get a little bit harder skin, I guess. Yeah. Sometimes you feel that. And so, like, she's like, oh, you've insulted me, whatever. And you're like, I'm sorry. And she's like, come on, make it sound like you need it. All right, I'm sorry. Yeah. And after saying it 3 or 4 times, she's like, you know what? Forget it. I'm not even going to ask you for an apology, because every time you say sorry, you sound so insincere. It's not even worth asking you for the apology.
You could always let them write the prescription for you. So you can say, look, I'm sorry I've offended you. What is it that I can do that would make you understand that I feel sorry, or that will make it up to you?
You try that.
That's a much bigger question.
It's a much bigger question. But I find in general that, like, I've tried it sometimes where my wife has, wanted sympathy from me. So sometimes it's easy to show sympathy, but sometimes you feel like, it's hard to feel sympathy for that thing. Whatever it is, that's not something I'm so sympathetic to. And then, like, when you say, oh, I feel really bad, she's like, forget it. You don't even sound like you feel bad about it. Just leave it. Just leave me alone. Leave the whole, instead of showing me this fake sympathy, just leave it. Right? I think God
try with empathy.
Pardon?
You've got to try with empathy.
Yeah, you're gonna feel it. And it's not, but you know what? It's not always so easy to feel it. And the problem of tshuva is that when you stand there on Yom Kippur, and if I were to go around on Yom Kippur, I don't want to do this exercise. I would hate to do this exercise. I said to somebody recently, one of the greatest things in Judaism is the fact that we don't have a confessional. I mean, could you imagine if we had a confessional in Shul?
Well,
Okay, so fine, you'd say, fine, I'll go to Rabbi Chazan, I won't go to you, and Rabbi Chazan doesn't know my voice. But still, if I had to sit in that room and hear everybody else's sins, it would make me sick. I'd feel ill hearing everybody else's problems.
It's cleansing. It's a ritual that they find cleansing, at least.
I'm sure they do. I'm not making fun of the ritual. I'm saying, thank God we don't have it in Judaism. I just say, as a rabbi, if I was the priest, I would really struggle with that. Really, really have a hard time with it. And I feel in a way that, if I went around shul and I spoke to people and I asked them on, that's what I'm saying. That's why I preface it. I wouldn't do that. But let's say I went around in shul on Rosh Hashanah on Yom Kippur and I said, David Mintz, tell me one thing you really feel bad about last year. Don't say it now. But, there might be something, or there might be certain things where you think, well, yeah, all right, maybe. But there might
I think
not be
I've already
anything.
told you.
Pardon?
So I think I already told you. So I had an incident which I feel truly, truly, truly bad about.
Oh, you told me about that one. Yes.
I told you about that. I shared it with you. And it is difficult.
We're not going to share it. I don't think this is one to be shared.
No. It's not for everybody, but that's where the basis for my question came along, because very often I think that when you get to Yom Kippur, you sit there, and there's very few people who sit there and really think, I've been a rusher this year. I've done loads and loads of bad things.
Yeah.
Most people sit there and go, okay, you know what? I've done a few bad things, and they're the usual bad things that I do every year, and I'm sorry about them, but nobody died from it, and it'll be okay next year. But every now and again, there's a pivotal moment in your life where you do something, or maybe sometimes it can be an action, but it can also be inaction. So if you fail to do something that can make somebody else feel upset, and I find that something which you need to wrestle with, and that tortures me more than all the other things that I do to myself all year.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, really. But if when we discussed this point that you made, you said to me the remorse that you felt after having done whatever it was that we discussed, it was terrible, and it was really something that plagued you, that happened on a Shabbos, and it plagued you in the entire Shabbos, the rest of the Shabbos. And when I talk about remorse between man and God, I'm talking about the same remorse. And very few people will feel that remorse that you felt on that Shabbos that you told me about. And that's really what I mean. The difficulty of Teshuvah is to actually feel the remorse like you felt that remorse with that individual, whoever that person is, for whatever happened in that instance. To feel that, even for one thing that you did wrong, whether it was missing a davening, whether it's not putting on tefillin, if you had that remorse one day for one thing, that'd be an amazing thing. And that's really the difficulty of Yom Kippur, is tapping into that remorse. It's not so easy. On the other hand, what I would say is, sometimes, and I don't know if this is correct or not, but we feel that God is more forgiving almost than we are to each other. Yes. If you had a good foribble with someone, if you had a good disagreement with someone, these things can go on for years. And as we say, if you ask forgiveness from someone in general, if you ask forgiveness from God in general, God, if you mean it, God would forgive you. The same is not necessarily true between man and man. And I think that's the other point that you're making. And that's the other side of the coin. So on the one side of the coin, it's how difficult is it to really try to get in touch with the emotions of really feeling upset or sorry about what you did during the year between yourself and God. And on the other hand, how difficult is it to really get those people whom you've hurt to move on? Because I think the difficulty of the people that you've hurt is that action, it almost never goes away. So let's say you called somebody a horrible name, or let's say you were not nice to somebody. Let's just make it up, right? I know you're not the kind of guy that wouldn't be not nice to people, but let's just say it happened anyway. There was a freak accident and something happened and you weren't nice to someone, right? So then, even if you go afterwards and you say, I'm really sorry about what I said, you'll never, ever be able to take that sentence back. You've said it.
Yeah.
And sometimes, by the way, the problem is, and in marriages, this is a problem. This is a problem amongst friends, amongst siblings. You sometimes, in a fit of rage, say something that's deep down inside you. And if I looked at you and I say, David, I think you couldn't care less about other people. And then let's say I said that to you, and then suddenly I said, oh, you know what, David, I didn't mean that. You're the most caring guy I've ever met, right? In the recess of your mind, you always think to yourself, that Eisenberg guy really thinks that I don't like him. Because in a moment of rage, sadly, unfortunately, in a moment of rage, you know what comes out? What we believe, what we truly believe about other people. Do you not find that?
Yeah.
If I really don't like somebody, so in general, I can hold it back. But if he's really pushed my button, suddenly, boom, out comes that sentence that you've been waiting to say to that guy for the last 10 years. And finally look at him and you go, Mr. Cohen, name made up, I think you are despicable, right? Now it's too late. Now you said it. You can never, ever take that back anymore.
And so that's what I'm saying. I think my advice to anybody, I'm not a rabbi to be giving advice to anybody, but my advice would be that you spend the next few days now in the run-up to Yom Kippur looking at your personal relationships with other people, because now's your chance to make that right with them. When it gets to Yom Kippur, then you face your maker, and then it's between you and him as regards what you've done that year. And I'm not saying that the ability to get forgiveness is easier, but let's face it, we always the old saying is that to err is human, right? To make a mistake is human, but to forgive is godly, because it's so hard to get forgiveness sometimes from humans, because we carry those emotions with us and we don't give them up that easily.
No, it's
So
very hard to give them up. If
very,
somebody's
very hard.
really hurt you, if somebody has truly, truly hurt you, I find a lot of the things that happen to us, they've hurt us a bit, but they've not truly hurt us. I think the other thing that I would say, which is correct in what you're saying, is that Yom Kippur cannot do anything for you for any sin between you and your fellow man. Yom Kippur will not wipe the slate clean. So if we had a big fight, we didn't, but let's say we had a big fight, you and I come to Yom Kippur, I come out of Yom Kippur, I go, I'm cleansed now. I'm not cleansed unless I walked over to you and I apologized to you profusely and made peace with you. I'm not cleansed. I said, yeah, but you know what? I got rid of all my averos, maybe between yourself and God. But if you've not made peace with men, so then you're still at the same stage where you were before. And so therefore, what you're saying is right. You have to get forgiveness from people before Yom Kippur. I think the important thing to keep in mind also, and I said this probably last week, I can't remember when it was, I said that on Rosh Hashanah, I was saying this in a shir, that it's become almost the norm, and especially in more from places, that people go over to each other and go, do you forgive me? Do you forgive me? Do you forgive me? Do you remember that, like in school, where everybody's running around
When you
and
ask for forgiveness 3 times, right?
yeah, but do you know what? There are 95% of the people in my life, I don't need to ask them for forgiveness, and they don't need to ask me for forgiveness either. Because we bump into each other once in a while in Shafa, and I go, hi, and they go, hi, you're right, yeah, you're good, yeah, have a good Shabbos. Then I meet them in Shafa right before Yom Kippur, and I go, I want to ask you for forgiveness. For what? Not meeting me 6 times a week in Shafa? I mean, what, you've not done anything.
Well,
And many
the
times
truth is, we all know who it is that we actually owe proper.
That's what I'm talking about. There are those 2 or 3 people in your life, maybe 5. I'm hoping it's never more than 5. But let's say 2. There are 2 or 3 people in your life that really deserve a sincere apology from you. There are 2 or 3 people like that. And many times we're too chicken to ask forgiveness from those 2 or 3 people. And we'll run around the entire shul forgiving everybody. And I forgive this one, I forgive that one. What about the people that you really did something to? I can't ask them. But no, but they're the people you need to really speak to. That's where your opportunity is. That's where Yom Kippur beckons to you and says, hey, come on, get with the program. This is the guy you need to apologize to, not all the other people. And it is, like you said, it's very, very hard. Do you think everybody knows who those 2 or 3 people are?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, that's what I said before. I think most people that get to Shul and Yom Kippur, I think they know pretty much the things that they still feel embarrassed about personally, the things that they feel that they've really crossed the line on, the things that they did. That, I mean, there's all sorts of things that we all do where we could do better. That's not necessarily what I'm talking about. We're talking about people that you actually crossed, or that you have, somebody that you ignored, that you didn't give them your attention, or whatever it is, didn't help them at a time when they needed help, or that you failed as a friend, as a husband, as a wife,
Or that
as
you
a
crossed the
whatever.
line you shouldn't have crossed.
There's loads of those things, but that's interpersonal relationships where I think most people know who it is that they need to square up to, and who it is that they need to ask for forgiveness from. And it's an interesting thing. It's something that I've obviously thought about quite a bit this last week as we've been talking about it,
Yeah.
because it's something that, at least for me, and I expect most people are going to feel this way, when you know you've offended somebody, unless you are a complete rusher, it will eat you up. It will eat you
Yes.
up until
Yes.
you just need it to end. You need to get to you need to try and make up for it in some way.
Yeah,
So I
to
think
find some kind of closure on it.
yeah, well, most people use it as a, you need to use it as a learning experience for what you can do better in the future, but it's also an opportunity to look at that past and see if there's still anything that you can salvage out of it. So it's a that whole concept of forgiveness at this time of the year, to me, it's always very interesting. Going back to,
You know what's harder, by the way, just on that same
yeah,
topic. There are times for people, well, like yourself, like myself, people are in a public office, that sometimes there are people that feel that we have let them down, and they might quite rightly feel so. I'm not saying that they're wrong in feeling that, but they've not even verbalized it. So you're going into Yom Kippur and said, you know what, there were 2 or 3 people that I mistreated this year, and I've gone to each one of them and I've apologized and I've made amends, and I feel good about going into Yom Kippur. And there could be 2 more people out there that actually think this mince is a Russia, and you don't even know it because they've not really come to you. They feel either too embarrassed, too shy, too anxious to come over and look you in the face and say, David, you know what? I really feel that you've done something wrong. I've had it over the years where I've had people call me up before Yom Kippur and they say, you know what, Rabbi, I'd like to tell you what I feel. I say, go on, what do you feel? And then this individual says, I feel you constantly ignore me, and I'm really, really upset about it. I said, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize, But I don't know, this has been going on probably from what it sounded like. I've been going on almost for 5 years. And I wasn't aware of it. And I must have taken so much guts on behalf of this person to pick up the phone to me and call me up and say, Rabbi, I feel you ignore me, and I really feel terrible about it. And I felt terrible about it afterwards. But the last 5 years, I've been going into Yom Kippur and saying to myself, I'm doing an okay job. And there's somebody else sitting somewhere within the shul thinking to themselves, this guy thinks he's, the bee's knees. He's not doing a good job. He keeps on ignoring me. He's awful. It's very hard.
well, every year we should send out the Yom Kippur survey that we're going to send out. People now have an opportunity to say where they think we can do better. And it is difficult when you've got a public office, of whether you're paid for that or not, whether you're a volunteer or not. If you choose to go into that, and that it becomes your life's work, or even a hobby, or whatever it may be, you take on with it those responsibilities, that there may be people out there that don't like the way that you handle things, and that you're going to eventually learn about it. And it's how you handle. We all make mistakes, and we're all never able to satisfy. You can't satisfy everybody all the time. You just can't. But it's how you learn from that and what we adapt to. So that maybe takes us nicely into a subject which is probably more difficult. Clive loves to throw these bombshells in, but it was a great question that he asked earlier.
I think we just wanted to get back to the Yom Kippur. So I said, Clive, we'd come back to your question, but we did want to get to Yom Kippur theme a little bit.
So it's interesting. I think my way of looking at this, and do you know what? Just a little window into the working of the executive and probably council members as well, but it's more the executive, I think, and certainly with the rabbi as well, is that there is a constant dialogue and a constant discussion about whether or not we're doing enough. to engage people, whether or not we are doing enough compared to other shuls, because that sets some sort of a standard, what everybody else is doing. We'd like to think we go above those standards, but also to try and work out whether or not we've left anybody behind, whether we're still addressing that audience, whether we need to change things to make people feel more comfortable. And I think I think the outcome of all of those discussions are that we can always do better. Loads on pastoral care, on the way that we interact with people, on perhaps the way that we make people feel comfortable in shul. If you're a stranger visiting our shul, are you made to feel welcome? Are we a happy and welcoming congregation? I'd like to think so. Are we taking everybody into account? So there are loads and loads of questions, and because of that, I think we need to ask more questions, and we need to spend more time listening to what it is that people want.
That's true. But on the other hand, what I would say to Clive Most Barkley's question over here, the people that have lost interest might not necessarily actually answer this survey, and that's part of the issue that we're going to face. So you might go out and send out the survey to everyone, and you get a response, but in general, you get the response from the people that are slightly interested. And Clive is saying, well, there are certain people that have just said, you know what, not interested anymore. And now they'll get an email from the shul and they'll ignore it. Where they might have come once a week or once a month to shul, they don't anymore. And it's become, unfortunately, this I was discussing with Modi Spitzer and discussing with the Chazan, is that it's become part of their Saturday morning now that they don't go to shul anymore. Like, to bring that back into their schedule is a real change. It's not so easy. And you can send them an email, you can send them a survey, and they'll look at the survey and go like, what can the shul do to engage me more? I'm not interested in engaging with the shul. It's like not really a question that I even want to answer because I'm not really looking for more engagement. So I don't know if a survey will actually answer Clive's question. It's a very, very hard question. I personally, I think we struggle with it. So in my mind, and again, this could be me thinking my way, in my mind, I think the more we open up, the more hopefully we'll be bringing people back. On the other hand, there will be people that will say the more you open up, the less you bring people back because the people don't feel comfortable to come. And then there will be people that say, well, those who feel comfortable are coming already, and those who don't feel comfortable won't come whether you open up or whether you keep it the way it is because otherwise they would have come a long time ago. So you might as well open up for those people who are here because you're not going to bring it. But I have heard from people, for example, somebody said to me, I really miss the Kiddushes, and I really miss the Shalash, and I'm not. Let's face it, our shul is not always only about davening. We're not Shai Mordechai. Very much, there's a very big part of our shul that's about the social interaction within the shul.
And as great as Shai Mordechai might be, I'm sure that's not always all about davening as well. There are other reasons why people go to shul. But
absolutely. I think my wife said to me that the Frum Shul is, it's like the men's coffee shop. So when she goes out with friends for coffee, guys get to do that 3 times a day by going to shul.
It's a wash house, yeah. But I ended up participating in a panel that was multi-faith. So there was representatives from the Muslim community and the Christian community, and we were talking about the way that faith communities might look after Corona or coming out of Corona. And all of them, and so it's not even just a Jewish problem, it is a problem in general. All of them are gearing up so that their projections are that they've lost a certain amount of their audience. The people that were coming previously to shul were hanging on by their fingernails to the scraps of religion that they still recognize from nostalgia, from growing up. It's the things that you were brought up with. And then once that is torn away from you because you've got that natural break, that fire break, which was lockdown, it's hard to bring that back, and it's hard to bring those people back. And in terms of engaging faith communities in the future, it is not all about the worship. So you can't get people into a church or into a mosque by saying, "Come on down. Our hymns are the best hymns in town. You're gonna love your Sunday morning in church." And the same in shul.
It's the same in shul.
People don't come to shul for anything more than a cultural or a social connection to and it's backed by religion, and I think it's beautiful. I think it's lovely the fact that you can, once you're inside Shul and you see some familiar faces and you see some people that you know and you get a few smiles here and there, it's nice to see other people that do the same things as you.
Yeah.
It's nice to be part of a club. It's how you bring that back.
So that's a good question. I mean, Phil Morrison has just made a suggestion, which is giving them back the Kiddush Corona style. And I actually, again, I speak a lot to Modi Schmitzer about this because Modi Schmitzer feels very strongly about certain things. And he's in Berry. So he said to me last week in Berry is the first bar mitzvah they've had in a very, very long time. And basically what happened was, they had the bar mitzvah, and he said the shul was split in two. So you had the one side, which was the bar mitzvah side, where everybody just sat however they wanted to do, no mask or anything. And the other one was the regular shul goers, 2 meters, masks, etc., etc. And then after the bar mitzvah, everybody was invited into Kiddush. And as you came into the room with the Kiddush, people got a little bag, and in the bag was like a kichel or a cake or whatever else it is. And, there was just a bag for each person. And everybody got their seat, and everybody sat down, and slowly people took off the masks, and Modi made Kiddush, and everybody started like slightly eating and looking over their shoulder, if anybody. And then he said what happened was people got comfortable, and they started milling about, and things started happening, and people started talking. And I think, in a way, it's about slowly bringing certain things back. I had 2 weeks ago, with the young men, I had a get together at Gary Freeman's house. I remember Michael Gassworth used to put these things on.
Yeah.
Started off with Paul Del Monte, then Michael Gassworth took it over. And he said, "Come, let's get together." And we got together at Gary Freeman's house, and there was 8 of us together, and we had pizza, and we had chips, and we had we had drinks, and it was brilliant. And we had a shir. And we're having another one tomorrow night. It's nice to have one two in 2 weeks, or 2 in 3 weeks, or whatever else it is. And you see there's an appetite that people put it out, and people saying, yeah, we're happy to come. And I think if you bring back, for example, a Kiddush, I do believe that we should bring back a Kiddush Corona style, which means we'll have the food that is separately wrapped. We're not going to have big bowls with everybody sticking their hands in for the crisps. Fine, granted. But I think people, as we said before, people can vote with their feet. So if you don't feel comfortable about going into the Kiddush, nobody's going to look down at you for not coming to the Kiddush. Please make your way home, and don't feel that anybody's forcing you to come. And if you'd like the social side of the shul to continue, so come into the Kiddush, and then you'll enjoy yourself in the Kiddush. And we can probably make the Kiddush we'll come back to that point also. We can probably make the Kiddush in the Hilton Suite to allow for even more distancing, so that people aren't literally on top of each other as they were in the Nat Barkley room. And we can find a way of making a Corona Kiddush, starting in the winter. And I think, considering that we're making a Simchas Torah lunch, the next step after Simchas Torah lunch should be Kiddush Corona style a week or two after that.
These are the things we need to consider. It's interesting because one of the conversations, I remember a conversation pre-Corona. It was a group of people were with the chief rabbi, and they were asking him how, because a lot of shuls had this problem pre-Corona. They're already, let's face it, Clive, we're not talking about a drop-off in numbers just because of Corona. This is the state of middle-of-the-road British Jewry. We've lost...
That's exacerbated things and it's sped them up terribly.
Yeah, so this is a great accelerator, and that's what's happened here. But they asked the chief rabbi, what can shuls like our shul do in order to engage people better? And he said, sadly, I'd love to tell you it's all about the davening. I'd love to tell you it's all about your programming. He said, but you know what the single biggest factor is that draws people into the shuls nowadays? He said, invest in your Kiddush. That was his, and that was his, but that was it. That was the advice that he gave to all the shuls here in Manchester that met with him, as to how they could really sort of reinforce what they're doing. Yeah. It's to get people into their buildings and to get people back into the swing of the things that make us, that bring us all down to that common denominator. It's normally food. Ian says we'll be doing a Corona style Kiddush in the Shul Sukkah.
Excellent, which I think we did last time also. The question will be now after Sukkot, can we do a Corona style Kiddush going forward? Clive also makes an interesting point, which is we were known as a talking shul, but that's what kept many people coming. And that's very true. Yeah, that is very true. That, a lot of people came for the social. And whilst it's not a great reason to come, on the other hand, if it keeps people coming, it's still something. It's better than not coming.
It's certainly not a bad reason to come.
Look, and C did that when they were working together. They spent a lot of money in Kedushin and put a lot of effort in those Kedushin.
But I think Sheila's right. When will the main shul be open for every Shabbos, with or without Kiddush? We are not JFK, Jews for Kiddush. You can invest very heavily in your Kiddush, and at some point, you're going over the top and you're kidding yourself if people are actually, coming for those reasons. But you're right. I guess the reason why Sheila's asking whether or not the main shul will be open for every Shabbos is that that's what we all long for, right? We want to get back to what is normal.
Yeah, so I think that's part of it, and I think it's opening up the main shul. We'll have to figure out is because the main shul allows for less seats and social distancing. So if we open up the main shul, we're going to have to let go of some of the social distancing because we can't have everything, and that's going to be part of the survey. So if the survey says people would rather be in the main shul, let go of some of the social distancing, allowing for certain areas. I think that people that want to keep social distancing should be allowed to do that. We shouldn't leave these people behind. We should make areas for people that want to sit 2 meters and masks, and we should make areas for people who don't want to do it. And then we'll see what the survey shows, which area is going to be bigger, and we'll choose accordingly. But if we go back to the main shul, we will allow for both sides, and then we can do that. Okay? So Ian says COVID, the decorum has improved dramatically. Yes, but that means a lot of the talkers don't come anymore, right? So climax are the people enjoying silent davening. That's only one side of the coin. I'm saying there's a lot of people that used to talk who aren't at davening anymore. Not silent, not loud. They're just not here anymore. And look around. The shul's not as full as it was. The shul is only at 50% capacity of what it was 2 years ago. And it needs moving.
Ian doesn't let a mask get in his way. He still manages to have a good chat. It's certainly more challenging, and these are all the things that we need to discuss. And I guess the answer to Clive is no one has a silver bullet as to what's going to make everybody come back into shul, and it's only that together as a community can we do a little bit of soul searching to find out what it is we can do better, to listen to the people that are telling us and giving us that feedback, and to build on it. We might not get everybody back. Is the honest truth. We might have lost an older generation of people that are just simply we're not going to see again. Luckily, the younger generation still have a reason to interact, because whether they like it or not, everybody's got to have a bar mitzvah, everybody has a bat mitzvah, the kids
coming to children's services.
Yeah, so that's a hook back in. And they're very much still engaged. It's very vibrant. So on one hand, yes, you look at the side of the community that might be waning a little bit, but you also see massive growth in other areas of it. And I think we're all going to get through this together. Is the thing. Clive would like us to rebuild our community to something even better than it was.
That's going to be very, very hard work, but it'd be lovely to be able to do that. Clive, I would love to be able to say that, that's something that we can do. And I hope it's something that we can do, but, time will tell. Time and effort will tell in this session.
Indeed. And with all of your help as well, because it is the people that make the community.
Absolutely.
And nobody else.
Thoughts, I guess.
Sorry?
With those thoughts.
With those thoughts, we draw to an end. And it is for me to hand over to you, Rabbi Eisenberg. But all I'm going to say to everybody is, I wish you all a good Yom Tov. I hope it is a meaningful fast, and I hope that your year to come is truly amazing. And I hope that you're going to join us on this journey to rebuild all our communities to better than it was before.
Yeah, and I can't add anything to that other than wishing my own, good Yom Tov to all of you. I wish you all well over the fast. The davening should go well, whether you're davening with us or the first minyan, the second minyan, or the third minyan. Either which way you should daven, and your davening should be accepted by God and should be considered something that you are. It should be considered something that is going to be meaningful and that's going to make its way to start rebuilding our community. We're going to try as well to do everything that we can, and hopefully together as a community, we will come out of this stronger and better. Wish you all Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Right. We'll see you soon.
Soon.
Take care, guys. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.